Ring, 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 ring. Oh, what's that? Oh, hello, past me. What? You said that there would be significant numbers of people being blocked because the government had introduced voter ID to try and solve a non existent problem. Oh, look, what's this we see today in today's Guardian? 14,000 people denied a vote. Now, we said it before. We said it before. This is brought in. This whole voter ID thing was done to try and solve a problem that was just completely non-existent. Voter ID laws, we said, would deny people votes. Not only that, even more worryingly, these types of laws can be expanded to, on purpose, deny people votes and will be used by future Conservative governments to do exactly that. In fact, it would not shock me if you saw Rishi Sunak right before potentially an upcoming next general election decided to try and alter some of these voter ID laws, trying to, once again, disenfranchise people from voting. And bear in mind, this is the result of the local elections. And I always want to remind you, local elections, very, very low turnout rate. So if this had been a general election, which we know we've got coming up, if we've got a general election where you see a lot higher turnout rates, what do you think is going to happen? This isn't going to be a 14,000. I suspect it's a lot higher. In fact, as we're about to see into this data, they suspect it's a lot higher. And you've got people who also say, well, I didn't go vote because of the voter ID laws. And as we were warning people on the day, if you forget your voter ID and you go to vote and a greeter says you cannot vote, ignore them, go in anyway, because then that data got recorded. And they reckoned that about 40% of people who did not have correct ID were turned away by greeters. So this data alone, highly, highly worrying for potential future UK elections. And remember, this whole problem of voter impersonation or whatever you want to call it was just simply not a problem. This was a problem that did not exist. Yet this whole thing, why voter ID was brought in, was just, oh, we need to solve people impersonating people. Well, there was never ever any evidence this happened. And oh, look, here's the data. Now, will this stand? Will this end up standing, this law, this voter ID law? Remember the last time that we had such a voter ID law, they removed it because 100 people were disenfranchised. I think that this could very, very well likely end up being removed. Maybe the Conservatives won't remove it, but it would be a key thing, I think, for Labour to remove, certainly when they get back into power. Because you cannot have these laws remain on the books, and especially you cannot risk it going into a potential, or even dare risk it going into another election. And let's say the Conservatives get back in and then make these laws harder to try and punish people who, again, don't vote for them. Because guess what else this information found? I know, absolutely shocking. You can already hear yourselves say it, but we're going to go diving into this because I think this is worth very much going over. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. Like I say, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee. There's the YouTube donation link called the YouTube thank you button. And there's the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, even if you do just click on the like and share button, like I say, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. So, let's crack on into this then. From The Guardian. The title of Voter ID, 14,000 people denied vote in England local elections, watchdog finds. About 14,000 people were turned away from polling stations at May's local elections because they lacked the right ID, with the overall number denied a vote likely to be considerably higher, the official elections watchdog has said. And remember what we were saying in the run-up to the local elections. I kept on warning people. Remember, take your ID. double check. And I kept on sharing it. And I was like, please, please, please share this information. Because as I said at the time, look, if you've not heard this before from me, where else have you heard it from? It wasn't, it barely even made the news, barely even in newspapers. Not a lot of people knew about it. I'd still be very shocked if people thought that they didn't have to take ID at the next local elections, because again, I still don't think the vast majority of people have actually realized this. So I do agree that this will be even considerably higher, and especially when you come to a general election where again the voter turnout is much, much higher. So the interim study by the Electoral Commission also warned of concerning signs that voters with disabilities, people who were unemployed, or those from particular ethnic groups could be disproportionately affected by the policy. Again, shock horror. But this is the point. Because, like I say, Conservatives don't want unemployed people voting. It also said that 4% of people who did not vote said it was because of voter ID, a tally that could run into the hundreds of thousands more. It's again highly concerning. Ministers need to carry out additional work on the system used for an entire election for the first time in May, and to make sure that people are not prevented from voting, the report recommended. Following this year's Election Act, voters must show a document from a small list of voter IDs for every general election, parliament by-election, and across the UK for local elections in England. Campaigners have warned that the policy targeted a very barely existing problem of voter impersonation and risked particularly affecting people from disadvantaged groups. The Electoral Commission has said that the data collected at polling stations across the 230 councils in England on the 4th of May found that 0.7% of voters were initially turned away for lacking the correct ID, with at least 63% of those returning, meaning that around 14,000 people were confirmed as being denied a vote. And this is where it gets really worrying. However, the report said the actual figure was likely to be higher, given that almost 40% of polling stations used greeters, tasked with telling voters before they went in that ID was needed. And here's the thing, if you went to a polling station and you were greeted by a greeter who said you don't have the correct ID, you weren't recorded in those official figures, which not only says this number was a lot higher, but is really worrying, because from what we heard, a lot of these greeters were insisting that you could then not enter. But that was completely false. You could enter, you could go, you could get all right up to getting the your ID. And like I said, I think I said my story when I went to vote. I basically had the poll card in my hand, and then they asked for ID. Now, at that point, I wondered, could I have said, no, I'm not going to show you? Like I say, I had the poll card in my hand. You know, it's yeah, it's interesting to say the least. But um yeah, this is really concerning. This really, really is concerning. And I think we could see the Tories try to fiddle with these laws even more to deny more people votes, especially at a general election, which again will be really concerning if we do. And if we do see them do that, then we have to make sure that there is significant pushback against that, and at least a very, very large uproar about it. So if a person left before going into the polling stations, this is what I was talking about, they were not recorded in the data. And polling stations that use greeters showed a notably lower average rate of people turned away than those that did not, of 0.55 against the 0.8. These statistics were additionally likely to underestimate the extent of the problem because the data at some polling stations was incomplete or inaccurate, the report added. The commissioner carried out separate polling to determine why some people did not vote, which found that 4% blamed the new ID rules. Of those, 3/4 said they lacked the necessary documents, while the remainder disagreed with the policy. And although the total electorate for the turnout of May's elections has not yet been published, if there are similar to previous years, it could mean at least 400,000 people decided not to vote because of these new rules. Instantly, this is damning. This needs to be completely wiped away. So, when a broader report in September, which will examine the demographic factors, the Commission said that the individual evidence suggested that the voter ID had disproportionately affected people who have disabilities who are unemployed, with some correlation also apparent with the factors such as I can't even say it, ethnicity. Craig Westwood, the Commissioner and Head of Policy, said that while it was too soon to draw definitive conclusions, some of the emerging evidence is concerning. He added, elections should be accessible to everyone, so we are working to build a better understanding of the specific experiences of voters at these elections. Easy. Just go back. Just undo it. This whole voter ID law is just completely useless. Our voting system ran perfectly well when we did not have voter ID. That's a fact. And yet they brought this in purely for the reason because they wanted to try and stop certain groups from voting. That's why it was done. They saw how well it was working for the Republicans in America, so the Conservatives brought it in here. So, Angela Rayner, Labour's former deputy leader, said that no legitimate voter should be locked out of democracy, but that has been the effect of the Tories' failed voter ID regulations. It is particularly alarming that under these underrepresented groups look to have been more likely to have been denied their say by these new barriers to voting. These strict rules have had a chilling effect on democracy. Helen Morgan, the Liberal Democrats' local government spokesperson, said, it looks like a transparent attempt of voter suppression by Conservative ministers who are desperate to stop people from holding them account by any means possible. A spokesperson for the Department of Levelling Up and Housing Communities said that it welcomed the report, which showed that the vast majority of voters, at least 99.75%, were able to cast their vote successfully. They added, these are encouraging findings, are also very reflective of the confidence we have always had in the ability of local authorities to implement these changes while continuing to deliver our elections robustly and securely. Yeah, just again, completely ignoring the damning findings. I mean, that number alone, that when you extract it out, as was here, this is it. Because we are right. We haven't seen yet the total turnout. This is the big takeaway for this. So although the total electorate for the May's turnaround has not yet been published, if they are similar to previous years, it could mean at least 400,000 people have decided not to vote because of new voter ID rules. This is so bad, so damaging to our democracy. We did not need these voter ID rules in the first place. They were not needed. These were brought in purely and simply because the Conservatives thought and seen in America that this favors the Republicans in a lot of certain areas, and it denies, a good chunk of people votes, which allow them to win in some cases. So why not bring it over here? Unfortunately, they very much succeeded, and I think there should now be if I were these parties today, I would be. We want to get rid of this. This just needs to go. This law is unnecessary. It wasn't needed. It needs to go. But we'll see what happens. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.